How did dynasty after dynasty of Turkic origin, like the Seljuks, the Khwarezm Shahs, the Timurids, the Safavids, the Afshars, the Qajars, etc., how did they all become Persianized over time in Iran, but did not become Indicized in India, like the Turks of the Delhi Sultanate and the Gurkhani Mughals? Why is that so? Interesting question. Interesting question. Cause and effect. Let's look at cause and effect. I mean, they should teach these things in history classes. I'm not sure if they do. So the Turks, we should actually take the question of how did the Turks become Muslim? But we'll take that question after this question. I've also selected that question. So now, how did so we know that after a certain point in time, after a certain period of history, in history, the Turks were all Muslims, right? All Turks were Muslims. And the Turks, they served in various some Turks acted as mercenaries in various armies, whether it is the Abbasid army of the Abbasid Caliphate or various Persian armies or whatever. And the Persians were the first non-Arabic people, essentially the first major non-Arabic civilization to become essentially almost entirely Islamized, right? So the Persians were Muslims. By the time the Turks had become Muslim, the Persians were already Muslim. And so the Persians were part of the Islamic world, correct? Now, in the Islamic world, the Persian culture, their literature, their architecture, their language, all of this was held in high regard, in high esteem. It was considered to be superior culture, superior manifestation of Islamic culture, perhaps even superior to the Arabic. Perhaps superior to the Arabic culture. Maybe some people would regard it as that. Um, so that's why. So because Persia was regarded as kind of the epitome of Islamic culture, that's why everyone wanted to copy those that culture, obviously, right? So the barrier, it doesn't exist that it's a non-Islamic culture. So it's okay to adopt that because they're also Muslims and they practice this culture which is regarded very highly in the entire Islamic world. Let's copy that. Let's become like them. Let's start using that sort of language. Let's perhaps use Persian as the court language. Yes, and we can hire some Persian bureaucrats and have them keep records for us, because Persian is clearly a better language for record keeping and bookkeeping than the Turkic language. That sort of thing. So that's why Turks became Persianized, and obviously Turks they later ruled Persia, as we know. And that barbarian Nadir Shah was not Persian; he was Turkic. Anyhow, so that's how the Turks e- gradually became Persianized because of the great prominence that Persian culture had in the Islamic world. Now the Turks also they ruled Persia. They conquered and ruled Persia. They also conquered and ruled India eventually, parts of India at least, didn't they? And the Turks never became Indianized. I mean, the Mughal dynasty, some of those kings, they married Indian ladies, but there's so by the time you have someone like who, uh, for example, Akbar married various Indian ladies. Akbar's mother was not Indian; his mother was Turkic or whatever she was, but he married an Indian lady. So his successor was, who was it? Salim Jahangir. So Jahangir was half Indian. Now, I suppose if Jahangir married an Indian lady, his son Shah Jahan would be three quarters Indian. So he would look more Indian than Turkic. And so many of the Mughal emperors had kings, had Indian wives, but they never became culturally Indian. They may have started looking Indian there as the generations went by, but they culturally remained Turkic. Why is that? That's the big question. Why is that? And why, since they adopted Persian so readily, why didn't they adopt Indian culture the same way? Because there's a barrier. Indian culture isn't Islamic. You can't adopt a non-Islamic culture. Persian was already the Persian culture was already Islamic. It was already a part of the Islamic world. So see what happened in Persia is that Persia got Islamized in a matter of years. India was various parts of India were under Turkic occupation, Arabic occupation, whatever, for like close to a millennium. Some parts of India, those never became uh, Islamized completely, except for Gandhar. And even in Gandhar, which is Afghanistan today, you still had Hindus and Afghans until the end of the 20th century. You still have some Sikhs, sorry, not Afghans, Sikhs. You still possibly have Sikh people in Afghanistan today. I'm not sure if there are still any, but even in the 21st century, you had Sikh people who lived in Afghanistan, and they were not Indian Afghans. They were Afghan Indian Sikhs. They were Afghan Sikhs. They were Pashtun Sikhs, right? Uh, so India never Islamized the way Persia Islamized, which is why Indian culture was always regarded as a non-Islamic culture, right? As an infidel culture. And that's why the Mughals, even though many of them were of Indian ancestry, largely, they still could not see Indian culture as their culture because we are Turks. And Indian culture is non-Islamic, so how can we adopt Indian culture? So Indian culture did creep in everywhere. Yeah, it did creep in, but officially they remained non-Indian, which is why I do not consider any of the Mughal kings or emperors as Indians. Kanishka was Indian. Akbar was not Indian. He was not. Okay, that's my opinion. You may not agree with me. That's okay. You have the right to your opinion. I do not see Akbar or Jalaluddin. His name was Jalaluddin, right? Yeah, Zahiruddin Babar and Humayun, and then you have Jalaluddin Akbar, which is very strange because there was another Jalaluddin the coward, who Chinggis Khan was pursuing all the way to India. so, so, so none of the Mughal kings were Indian because they never adopted Indian culture. They never became Indian. They remained, even if they may have been born in India, even if generations of Mughals were born in India, they still remained outsiders. They considered themselves to be foreigners. So it is not right to call them Indians. Just being born in a land doesn't make you a person who belongs to the land, right?